Tips for raising goats. Here are some tips to help you get up to speed quickly with your new herd. Goats are social animals. They belong in a herd and they depend on the herd for their own safety. Point 1. Never keep just one goat. Goats think like goats. Learn how to think like a goat to figure out how to keep them happy in their fencing with easy access to water, food, and shelter. If you think they're being stubborn, look at things from a goat's perspective. They don't know how to walk down and around an object to get to something on the other side of a fence, for example. They will just stand there looking at it, unsure of how to solve the problem. Bucks are males with a mission. Respect them. When bucks are in rut, they have one thing on their minds. They can be dangerous when in rut, so use care in handling them and respect that potential. Billy goats smell very strong when they're in rut. However, you don't have to keep billy goats on your farm. You can just keep does and avoid the smell by borrowing bucks when you need them, if you can find them. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, which is where your goats want to be. Make your fences strong and secure to combat this natural goat tendency. Goats can get out of any fence weakness. Your fencing must be kept secure and free of holes and weaknesses. Inspect it often and repair it promptly. A big rumen means healthy digestion, not necessarily a fat goat. Point 2. Goats are supposed to be pot-bellied because they are ruminants. Goats are much more like deer than they are like cattle. It helps to understand goats if you think of them more as browsers, animals that eat shrubs and small trees. They roam and forage much more like deer than cows. Goats can't eat everything. Point 3. They're not like their cartoon version, eating tin cans happily. Keeping their digestion functioning smoothly with good nutrition is harder than you think. Make sure you have a goat nutritionist review your herd's needs and formulate a feeding program just for you. Learn about how to feed goats properly. Goats are farm animals, not pets. These are herd animals that have a social pecking order and know how to maintain it. Point 4. They are not meant to be fully domesticated like a dog or cat, so don't treat them like pets. Raising goats can be an intimidating prospect for a newbie keeper. Anyone who has raised goats before surely has more than a few stories to tell about their antics. But, with a proper setup and armed with accurate knowledge, keeping goats can be both a rewarding and lucrative proposition. Let me share with you some tips on how and what you need for raising goats, to save yourself a headache. The needs of a goat herd are rather basic. A safe sleeping space, firm boundaries, an area to browse for food, clean food, and water containers, and routine health care. Once you have these setup basics in place, looking ahead for potential problems can help you avoid them as much as humanly possible when dealing with such independent and ornery livestock. Raising goats and choosing the right fencing. Goats are notorious for getting out of their pen. But, goats are highly intelligent animals that can be trained as easily as dogs to learn their boundaries and to mind their humans. If you want to teach your goats to free range, I highly recommend starting with a single doe or nanny goat before purchasing more herd members. Boundaries. Once you have taught the goat her boundaries, tie her out during the daytime in areas where she is free to roam. While still keeping her sleeping pen or barn stall in sight, you can begin to turn her loose for short amounts of time under your supervision to make sure she does not stray from her designated area or your homestead in general. Having plenty of browsing material and/or hay to munch upon in the central browsing location helps to keep the goat near the pen or stall area. Goats should always be secured in a pen or stall to protect them from predators overnight, even if you keep a well-trained pair of livestock guardian dogs in the barnyard. When you are satisfied that the nanny goat or doe is trained to free range sufficiently, then you can add a billy goat to the mix. The intact male goat is going to stick to the female like glue. It is unlikely that you will need to tie him out for more than one day to teach him to remain within the designated boundaries. After these two goats are trained to free range, any other goats you add to the barnyard will meld into the herd or veteran homestead occupants and roam around within the boundaries along with them, as will kids born to any nanny goats. If free-ranging the goat herd is not something you truly want to do and dedicate the time needed during the initial training, or is allowed to do where you live, then invest as much money and time as your budget allows into sturdy fence construction. Use small-gauge high-tensile wire fencing attached firmly to wood posts with strands of barbed or electric fencing in between the panels to prevent climbing and scratching on the outer fence. This can weaken it to the point that it bows or collapses entirely. Raising goats, can they be tamed? Developing rapport and trust with the goats is a good thing, even if you are raising the animals for meat. A goat that is not accustomed to interacting with humans will be incredibly hard to catch if it gets out and equally difficult to tend to if it becomes sick or injured. Some folks believe you need to bottle feed goats, removing them from their mothers to do so, in order to tame them. Talk to the goats as you pick them up, always cradling their front and back legs against your body so they can feel something solid beneath their hooves. The kids will likely squirm and wail at first, but just keep petting them and talking to them, offering them a treat on occasion, before putting them back down into the stall with their mama. Expect them to bolt or run to their mama's belly or back for safety for at least a few days after being handled. Getting the goats used to human touch, sound, and smell from an early age makes working with them and training them a far simpler prospect. You will be tempted to start keeping goats as pets. Goat sociability. Goats are social animals and have a herd mentality like horses. All dogs and goats do not get along so famously. Keep this in mind when keeping both dogs and goats on your homestead. A goat must have a companion animal of some type to prevent anxiety and bad behavior, increasing the likelihood of escape attempts. There is safety in numbers. Yet another reason to keep a solid herd of goats or to keep a goat alongside a safe companion animal to help protect it from predators. Goats and sheep often live together in the same pen quite well. But I have seen more than one mean ewe or billy goat cause damage or even death to herd members that are not of their same breed. It does not take long to notice that each goat possesses its own distinctive personality traits. You will have to judge carefully which herd members will tolerate intermingling not just with other animals in the barnyard, but with new additions to the herd, in general. A definite hierarchy will develop in the goat herd. Not all new members will either be accepted or safe if a strong-willed nanny goat or your billy goat refuses to accept them. Boredom busters when raising goats. If your goats will be kept solely or primarily in a pen, providing boredom busters is an absolute must. Bored goats are destructive goats. Never forget this valuable tip. Provide the goats with items to climb on, climb through, and play with. Make sure that any upcycled or purchased material you use to make the goat playground does not have any old nails sticking out sharp metal edges, or other attributes which could lead to mild injuries that could easily become infected or severe injuries. Goats, even miniature breeds, are excellent climbers and jumpers. Situate the play areas in the middle of the pen to avoid the toys being used as an escape ladder. Raising goats and bloat. Bloating is one of the most common goat ailments you will have to deal with when keeping this type of livestock. Goats, like cattle and sheep, are ruminant animals. When one of the 4 chambers of their stomach gets out of whack from eating the wrong thing or even too much of the right thing, bloat occurs. Goat bloat can be deadly if not detected and treated quickly. Keeping goat drench on hand or making your own natural version is highly recommended. But daily prevention measures can help thwart the occurrence of goat bloat. This goat husbandry chore is both simple and cheap. Simply offer baking soda as a daily free choice snack to the goat herd. Goats like baking soda and will instinctively munch on it when their rumen begins to feel off. Raising goats, we suggest you start small. Resist the urge to get too many goats at once, even if that means you are going to pass on what seems like an awesome deal. As the old saying goes, you only get one chance to make a good first impression. If you are new to goat keeping or are switching from keeping one type of goat either in size or using another, branch out in either breed or type, you must be able to commit the time to work with each goat and acclimate them into your husbandry routine. If you become overwhelmed by taking on too many goats, expect the training to go poorly and bad behavior or injuries to result in the herd. Goat farming is defined as raising goats for milk, meat, and fiber. This process has been going on since ancient times. Rearing goats is a lucrative business. Due to its good economic prospects, goat rearing has been gaining momentum for many years under the ultimate and semi-deep system for commercial production. It has become a lucrative business and requires very little investment due to its high utility. In addition, the commercial goat farming business is making a significant contribution to the country's economy and nutrition. However, Goat meat is a great source of usable meat which is very tasty, nutritious, and healthy. Goat's wool is also used for various purposes and its skin plays an important role in the leather industry. Tips for selecting the ideal location, fencing tips, housing facilities, tips for choosing the right goats and diseases. Tips for selecting the ideal location for your goat farm. Location does not require a large area. Goats do not need much space to live because of their small body. They can easily share their living space with their owners or their livestock. In addition, goats are ideal for mixed farming with other domestic animals. Generally, they thrive and grow well in warm areas where water does not stagnate easily. The ideal location would be a place on the outskirts of villages or cities where the air is clean and free from pollution. Since they like to eat a lot of grass every day, the pasture should be located near the rearing shed and they should have plenty of grassy bushes, shrubs. The surface should be clean and dry and even the soil floor will be suitable except for areas with heavy rainfall, snow which makes it wet and slippery. Fresh and clean water should be available in the area regularly and easily as goats need to drink a good amount of water daily to stay healthy. Full-time labor for the care of animals should be readily available. Land required for open spaces for grazing and shed construction. Fences should be readily available at reasonable prices. Housing facilities and management tips. The main purpose of the house is to protect the animals from the sun, wind, and rain. The house should be built at a height so that it does not face water-filling problems. Locally available materials such as elephant grass, paddy straw, bamboo, wood, etc., are used to build houses. Extensive accommodation arrangements are not required for smaller units. Goat sheds must have good ventilation. The slope should be arranged in such a way that the water drains easily and the place is easy to clean. 1.8 square meters space in group housing. The floor space should be 2.4 sq mount, should be provided for the bucks. An area of 1.8 by 1.8 square meters is enough for 10 kids. However, overstorage should be avoided as it can lead to cramps and suffocation. Sick animals should be quarantined immediately as the disease spreads easily in goats. Tips for fencing goat farm. Goats are best for crawling at short intervals or climbing over fences. A 5-foot fence or more, stronger than a no-climb wire fence between lines, is harder to climb or slip than a fence made of horizontal beams. If you have the money and are, then make sure to make separate, strongbox pens, especially with strong and long fences. This fence will prevent your bucks from accessing your work on Easter. In other words, it will prevent your goats from breeding unplanned. Significantly different sized goats should not be kept together unless they are kept with their mother. Fencing for goats needs to be protected, not only to keep them indoors, but also to keep out predators, foxes, bears, dogs, coyotes, and more. Then put a fence inside the goats to keep the goats away from each other. This can be temporary or permanent. Temporary fencing. Temporary fencing means keeping money and weaning babies away from work. It can be poly tape or wire, electric mesh, or high tensile electrical wire. If using high tensile wire, you will need 5 to 7 wire strips at a distance of about 6 inches at the bottom and a little more for the upper wires. Permanent fencing. Permanent fencing can also be made with high tensile wire, but if you aim for small predators as foxes are kept away, they can easily crawl under a 6-inch high wire. A strand of barbed or electric wire at the top will help keep goats in and more predators out. Your goats will need a place to go in the winter and rainy seasons. A small pole barn will work fine. Breeds of thick coats goats may be able to withstand cold temperatures, but first, check with an experienced goat farmer. A 3-sided wall will provide fresh air if you live in a mild climate. If your area is experiencing a cold, create a completely closed, draft-free environment, but let the goats out during the day. Goats hate puddles and wet weather. If you live in a rainy area, you may want to provide a large indoor enclosure. Tips for choosing the right goats. Several goats are ideal for milk, meat, and various other purposes. Let's take a look at the important things you need to know to choose the right goat for your goals. Next, in this initial guide to raising goats, we will talk about how to prepare and care for your goats. Different types of goats are available for farming in the world. Breeds of goats are divided into different groups according to their production. Here we are briefly describing the different types of goats. Dairy goats. If your goal is to produce milk, cheese, and other dairy products, you may want to choose a dairy goat breed based on some factors. Every breed of milk has a slightly different taste, so that's one consideration. Their attitudes are different as well as their milk. This breed of goat is famous for its milk production. Saanen, Toggenburg, Barbary, Jamunapari, Alpines, La Manches, Nigerian dwarfs, etc., are high milk producing breeds of goats. Some dairy goats are also suitable for meat production. A favorite Nubian goat's milk. The Nubians are one of the most charismatic goat breeds out there, but they can be quite loud and aggressive. Goat meat breeds. Although any goat can be used for its meat, the two most popular meat goats are Boer goats and Kiko goats. Boer goats are a strong breed with a white body, brown head, and backward curved back. Some people say that Boer goats are the hardest and easiest meat to raise, while others prefer other breeds of meat goats. If you raise Boer goats, make sure they have plenty of food and look for food, trees and plants, because when they graze down, they eat very close to the ground. Insects and parasites cause problems. Kikos are slightly smaller than Boer goats, but they are also excellent meat producers. They can better sustain themselves in harsh conditions with very little input from goat owners. There are many other breeds and mixed breeds that also produce good meat goats. This type of goat is very meat productive. Some goats produce good quality meat. Boer, Motto, Black Bengal, etc., are some of the high meat productive goat breeds. Follow these tips to buy goats. Choosing the right goats is not an easy task. No one should ever go out and buy a goat without doing some homework first, otherwise, you will waste time, effort, and money on it later. Do your research, it involves many steps. Do your homework. Firstly, start by reading a variety of goat-related websites and forums online. Ask other goat owners about their experiences with different breeds, but always get information from different people because breeds that work well for one person may not work well for you. Narrow your focus. Secondly, be clear about what you want from your goats. If you like milk and cheese, you don't want to waste your time with Boer goats. If you are looking for meat, there is no way to get a pygmy. Lastly, be realistic about your available time and budget. Find goats that are healthy without any problems. This is especially important if you have a full-time job outside of farming, in which case a goat that requires constant monitoring, care, or care of expensive animals is not a good choice. Consider your budget when choosing goats. Equipment needed for goat farming. Goats are some of the basic equipment needed for goat farming. They also have special equipment for milking, meat, fiber, or kids. Goat feeder. Goat water trough. Pitchfork. Wheelbarrow. Goat record book. Goat hooves. Serrated goat clippers. Microchip. Breeding strategies formulation for improvement of goat. In the commercial goat farming business, modern farmers are using artificial insemination systems for breeding. It is well suited for large-scale commercial goat farming. If you are just starting with some goats, then you should use natural goat breeding. If you are interested, you can contact any of your nearby organizations. A good breeding strategy is an integral part of the genetic improvement of goats for meat, fiber, and milk production. When formulating breeding strategies for the betterment of goats, the formulators should take into account the following criteria. Adaptation of breeds to local agroclimatic conditions. The socio-economic condition of the farmer. Market demand. Availability of good quality bucks. Diseases and vaccinations tips in goat farming. In general, veterinarians play an important role as there are chances for goats to contract diseases. Then, they can help in disease control and management to avoid losses. They can help control and manage the disease to avoid harm. They will diagnose diseases and prescribe vitamins and supplements to keep your animals in good health, especially in stressful situations such as weaning. Goats are highly adapted to almost all types of agroclimatic conditions and conditions. They can withstand high and low temperatures all over the world and live happily ever after. Additionally, they can withstand warmer climates than any other animal. Goats also have fewer diseases than other domestic animals. Goat health plays an important role in creating a profitable business. However, diseases are less common in goats. But there is adequate veterinary service on your goat farm. It would be better if your goat farm is located near any veterinary service center. You should store essential medicines and vaccines on goat farms. Always be aware of your goat's health and take good care of it while providing good housing and nutritious food. Vaccinate your goats regularly every year to prevent various diseases and health problems. Your adult goats will need an annual vaccine for enterotoxemia and tetanus. They should be infested with insects and should be protected from ticks and lice every fall and spring. Regularly trim the hooves to prevent all types of foot injuries. As a beginner goat farmer, you should always be aware of your goat's health. Always keep the contact numbers of your nearest doctor, so that you can call him immediately in case of any emergency. Also try to learn how to cast males, make horns, and slaughter goats for meat. Learning them will save some money, but not necessarily. Always keep a record of your farm's activities, including birth dates, breeding dates, vaccination or medicine dates, food costs, milk or meat production, and more. That way you can make your goat farming business more profitable. Tips for goats feeding and water equipment. The amount of food and type of feeding equipment depends largely on your area, housing, and fencing. If you are going for a traditional wooden or wire fence, you can put feed buckets or troughs in your fence. If you have an electric fence, you will probably have some kind of housing inside the fenced area where you can install feeders. Other important considerations are water and grass feeders. If your area is experiencing severe winters, consider buckets of warm water. This will make things easier for you, so you don't have to change the water all day long in the cold. About herbivores, goats, especially pregnant goats, should never encounter loose grass. This can lead to serious health conditions such as bloating and miscarriage. You want to make sure the grass stays dry and away from the ground. For this, make or buy covered grass feeders that keep the grass at a considerable distance from the ground. Goats are careful eaters and can tolerate more bitterness than other animals. Therefore, they can grow on agricultural byproducts, waste, and other such food. In addition, they are strong and can withstand all kinds of weather conditions. Their tongues are suitable for grazing and their upper lips are mobile. So they can graze on very short grasses, shrubs, bushes, and trees. Goats should be provided legumes besides pulses, wheat, maize, etc. They generally prefer leguminous fodder over straw or corn silage. In addition, they need at least 14 to 15% protein as well as high mineral compounds such as iodized salt, bone meal, zinc oxide, ferrous carbonate, high-grade limestone, copper sulfate, and vitamins. Farmers are given 100 grams per day of concentrate mixture while an adult does and bucks are given a concentrate ration of 200 to 250 grams per day. On average, each goat consumes 5 to 7 kilograms of green fodder and 1 liter of water daily. According to statistics, 1 acre of fodder is enough to feed 35 goats. Always try to keep your goats healthy. Healthy goats equals high yields equals maximum profits. So, you have to be more careful to keep your goats healthy. Here are some common ways to keep your goats healthy and productive. Tips for successful management of goats. Follow regular deworming and vaccinations. Do not wait for diseases to come. Local breed goats are best for the local market. Start farming with a veterinarian. Do not raise goats grazing on stall feeding farms and vice versa. Semi-intensive farming is the best method for goat farming. Start farming with local breeds and create your market channel for milk and meat instead of upgrading your breeds on the farm. Regular hygiene and good management practices are essential for maximum productivity. Work on existing goat farms for 15 days to a month before starting your goat farming unit. Visit the nearest local cattle market and take care of the demand, supply, and market of goats. Climate management is essential for better performance. Isolation and immediate treatment are essential to control the disease. Cultivation of fodder and fodder plants is the key to success in goat farming. Tips for raising goats and maximizing profits. Read about how to raise goats and do proper research and planning. Maintain good and strong health of your goats. Choose the right and high-yielding breed of goat for your business. Learn more information about goat farming from expert producers or the nearest livestock training center. Goats like to live in groups. So, make sure they have a large area so they can move around freely. All the equipment required for goat farms should be available. Ensure good breeding practices to produce better milk, meat and keep goats free from diseases. Give them plenty of clean water, food, and fresh grass according to their daily needs. Never feed goats contaminated food or contaminated water. Take more care of pregnant doe, breeding buck, and kids. Feed the buck extra nutrients during the mating season. See a veterinarian regularly, if possible, to improve your goat's health. Give them salt and mineral water in the summer. Healthcare tips in goat farming. Sheds must be thoroughly washed and disinfected at least once a month. Food and water managers should clean regularly. Goats are at risk of endocrine infections. Therefore, deworming must be done once every 6 months. Kids are dewormed every month while does are killed just before the breeding season. Animals should be sprayed regularly with ectoparasitic drugs such as acaricides to avoid lice, ticks, mites, etc. Goats should be vaccinated from time to time against diseases like goatpox, plague, FMD, etc. Zoonotic diseases such as salmonellosis, brucellosis, etc. must be prevented because they are contagious and spread easily. Stray animals should not be allowed on the farm to prevent infection. Sick goats should be isolated as soon as the infection is detected and timely medication should be administered. Proper care is essential for raising goats. So, before you start a goat business, try to learn more about how to take care of goats. Marketing tips. In the goat farming business, the total expenses and profits depend on several elements like the farming system, location, breed, cost of food, and a few other factors. With good planning and proper management, the goat farming business can be easily made profitable. Firstly, small-scale farming requires less investment and profits can contribute to your regular income. On the other hand, commercial or large-scale production needs more investment and additional costs. Marketing is a challenging task in goat farming. Most of the time the farmer and the butcher will get the same margin. Farmers face a monopoly system because butchers are the only buyers. Sell goat's milk and meat directly to consumers for better profits. Those who are starting goat farming will get good margins by selling new farming units or new farmers. Don't raise high-profile breeds for local butchers as they will buy at low cost, which is detrimental, and high-profile breeds require more care and feed input, which increases production cost. Start farming with local breeds. Update the market, and once you find a good market, update your breed on the farm. Create market channels in cities for milk and meat. Although, this is the easiest but most important part of commercial goat farming. So, now that all is well and you get a good product, it's time to market your product. Firstly, try your local market, and then the major markets in your country. Only then can you test the international market.